All right, guys, we have arrived at Unit 3, which is all about bonding. And personally, I think that this is one of the most exciting units of the chemical aspect of physical science because it really helps you get an understanding of how exactly the things that we use every day are formed, how they're created, how they are maintained. I love learning about this aspect, and I hope that you do too. So, to get started, we are going to have just a quick introduction to the concept of bonding as well as the types of bonding that exist. Okay, so we have three different gifts over on the right hand side of the screen right now. These three different gifts represent bonding. Just looking at these images, do you think that you would be able to define bonding to someone who maybe has no idea? I'm going to go ahead and give you guys about a minute to look at the various images, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts about what exactly these different gifts mean to you in terms of bonding. Perfect. So that was our minute. Would anybody like to share what they think these gifts tell us about bonding? Okay, great. So we have some excellent answers. And keep those in mind as we explore more about bonding. And we're going to come back to this slide just so we can see how these gifts line up with our learning later on. So, what is bonding? The simple definition is that it's just two or more atoms joining together to become a compound. To do that, to join together, to bond, they use their valence electrons, which we learned about last unit. There are three major types of bonding that we will focus on this unit: ionic bonds, covalent bonds, and metallic bonds. Let's just remind ourselves what are valence electrons before we move any further. They are the electrons in the outermost shell of a Bohr model. Those are your valence electrons. They are also the electrons that are shown on your Lewis dot diagrams, and all elements in the same group have the same number of valence electrons. So if an element is in group 18, like neon, for example, it would have 8 valence electrons, while an element in group 1, so say for example, hydrogen, would only have 1 valence electron. The first type of bonding that we're going to learn about is our ionic bonding. Ionic bonding happens between an anion or a nonmetal and a cation or a metal. Normally, a metal and a nonmetal or a polyatomic ion. It involves the electrons being transferred completely from one ion to another. So in this image over here, we can see that you have one atom giving away as sort of like an engagement ring its valence electron to another atom, which is happily receiving it. It's one atom giving another atom It's electron or electrons. It depends on what needs to take place. Covalent bonding happens between two nonmetals and it involves sharing electrons. So in this image, you can see that the two atoms are out to dinner together and they are swapping food. They're letting each other taste what's on each other's plates. They're sharing the food equally. And that's what happens when you have a covalent bond. Two atoms sharing electrons. And then the last type of bonding that we're going to learn about is our metallic bonding, which happens between metals, as the name might suggest. The valence electrons of the metallic ions separate themselves from the individual atoms and they circulate around the cations or the metals. We describe this as delocalized electrons in a sea of cations. Electrons jump from metal to metal as they need them. So essentially, the metals are sharing the electrons. Again, you have your types of chemical bonds, and this is type number 3, metallic. So you see the two atoms, one of them has like a little baseball bat, and the other has a ball and a trash can. If you've ever played trash ball in class, I love to play trash ball. So maybe you do, maybe you don't. You will have the opportunity to throw a paper ball into the trash can, and then usually you reuse the same ball, right, for every student as you play trash ball. So this is what's happening in metallic bonding. The electron, which is the trash ball in this instance, continues to move, and every atom has equal access to that electron or to those electrons. So now I'm going to take us back to this page where we initially even thought about the concept of bonding using these gifts. So we have three very different versions of what's happening. What type of bonding do you think is represented by this gift at the top, based off of what we learned? Okay, great. So we think that this might be a form of ionic bonding, right? Because you have a metal, sodium, and a nonmetal, chlorine, an anion and a cation, and they are hooking up. And sodium's valence electron, its single valence electron, completely leaves sodium and connects with chlorine. That's an example of an ionic bond. So now we have two types of bonding left. We have covalent and we have metallic. Okay? So which one do you think is covalent and which one do you think is metallic based off of our descriptors? Perfect. So you should have said that the middle gift, where they are evenly sharing the electrons, see how they connect and they don't let go and they just move together? That's a shared electron pair. That's our covalent bonding. And then this one down here at the very bottom where they're bouncing around like mad, those are our metallic bonds because the electrons move as a sea of delocalized electrons. Perfect. So that's all for today, where we discuss what exactly bonding is. And later on, starting tomorrow, we're going to talk about the types of bonding in more detail. See you guys tomorrow.